My job as a consultant is to communicate what they want to do and how they want to do it in their voice, not in mine.
This is the My Campaign Coach podcast, where we talk about how to win elections. Every week, we let you hear straight from the best consultants, operatives, and candidates in the game, all for one reason: to help you win. For more information about how we can help you win, visit mycampaigncoach.com. Now, here's your host, Raj Schaefer.
Welcome to the How to Run for Office podcast from My Campaign Coach. We just crossed 20,000 downloads a couple days ago, and so I want to say a big thank you to everybody who's listening and sharing our content. I really enjoy doing these interviews and getting to talk to folks every week and learn more myself about how campaigns should be run, but it would be much less fun if nobody downloaded them and listened to them. So thank you guys for doing that. Please keep reviewing us on iTunes and liking our Facebook page. All that allows us to reach more and more people and have a bigger and bigger impact, and that's something that only you guys can do to help spread the word. So thank you guys so much. This week, we're talking to Corbin Casteel, founder and president of 413 Communications. For more than 2 decades, Corbin has served as an advisor to a wide range of officials in federal government and state. He's built a reputation in Texas, nationally and internationally, for being a great consultant and somebody that you can trust, somebody who's going to get the job done and can help get you elected. Last year, he transitioned from the campaign consulting side to more of the focus of government relations and lobbying. So he's not doing campaigns right now, but his wealth of knowledge made him somebody that I've really been looking forward to having on the podcast and talking to. He's an Austin, Texas native and a graduate of the University of Texas, Austin. That's where he lives with his family now, and where his little boy's playing football and little girls doing dance and having fun being a young lady. And I'm really excited to have you on the podcast today, Corbin. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on, Raz.
Man, I know that you've recently gone over to the dark side of the government relations and lobbying side of the house, and have moved the business away from the campaigns. But that's some place where you built a huge reputation in the last 2 decades, really. Somebody that I knew of well before I ever got a chance to meet you or interact with you. And I want to hear, as we start out every week, just kind of talk me through your story, how you got involved in politics, and how you ended up building that reputation.
Sure. So I was born and raised here in Austin, what you and DFW like to call the People's Republic of Travis County.
That's right.
My father was an insurance agent, old life insurance agent, and we went to Hyde Park Baptist Church here in Austin. So I was raised in and around the Baptist Church, and Dad was real involved in the business community. And we had a really good friend of our family's who was at the time on the city council and mayor of Austin, Carol Keaton McClellan. Who most of us in Texas politics know as Carol Strayhorn or Carol Rylander, our former comptroller and candidate for governor. So she was a good family friend, and I was 4 or 5 years old hammering up Carol Keaton McClellan for mayor signs. So, at an early age, my father, he instilled the importance of civic responsibility and duty into us. And when I was, 12 or 13 years old, I had, when Bush 41 was running for president for the first time, I had our entire block lined up with yard signs, with Bush yard signs. And some of the neighbors, they didn't like it because it highlighted them as the only Democrats on the block. So, I just had an interest at an early age. I was writing happy birthday letters to President Reagan when I was a child, and so I was just always interested. I loved our president. I looked up to President Reagan and President Bush, and so then when I got to the University of Texas, I just found that as an early passion. I became the president of the College Republicans at the University of Texas, which was an interesting time. We were the largest chapter in the United States at the time, even bigger than Texas A&M. But it's kind of difficult to sell Bob Dole versus Bill Clinton to a bunch of college students. But we had a good time with the effort, at least. At that time, during all that work, I was offered a job by a still very close and dear friend, Barry Williamson, who was on the Texas Railroad Commission as an intern, and received that job. It was exciting. I loved working for Barry and just kind of learning how the Texas oil and gas industry is regulated in the state of Texas. And then a real exciting opportunity came right after that when Karl Rove called me and asked me if I would head up the statewide youth campaign for Bush for governor in '98. So, when Karl Rove calls, especially a young up-and-comer like myself, you jump at it. So it was a great opportunity. There was some neat opportunities to also be on the advance team for then Governor Bush, and a couple of times I got to hop on the plane with him and Karen Hughes and Carl and Governor Bush, and just sitting. And at that time, there was all the talk about him potentially being the next president. But it was exciting to watch all that kind of happen. And if his name got mentioned in the hotline or national news or something like that, we all jumped. Hey, did you see the governor was mentioned in the news today? Yeah, that was kind of a big deal at that time. But it was neat to kind of have a front row seat to his ascension to the presidency.
And so this was in '98 when he was running for re-election for governor, right?
That's right. When he won with 69% of the vote over Gary Morrow. He was the first governor to ever be reelected to a consecutive 4-year terms since they went to 4-year terms. I believe there were 2-year terms in the 60s or 70s.
Oh, wow.
But so it was exciting times. It was a neat time to be coming up as a Republican, soon-to-be consultant operative in Texas. We still didn't have the whole state overtaken at the time, but it was happening. The Democrats still had the House, but Speaker Craddock then got elected Speaker, and I was offered a job as the finance director at the Republican Party of Texas. It was a great 4 years under Susan Weddington. Learned the ins and outs of fundraising and how hard that is, and how I don't ever want to do that ever again.
Yeah, my least favorite, most essential part of political campaigns.
God bless the fundraiser, just the hardest job there is. But then during the 2004 Bush-Cheney reelect, I accepted a job with the RNC as a regional finance director. So I was spent all my time on airplanes all over the southern 15 United States, and that was an exciting time. Also, it was Bush versus Kerry, and spent a lot of time in Arkansas and West Virginia and Florida and all the other targeted states, to making sure there's no more hanging chads or anything like that.
That's right.
As there were in 2000. But so those were some fun times, and I came back from the RNC job, decided I want to hang out a shingle on my own, and so since then I've like you said, I've had a jerk boss. I've worked for myself since 2005. So
yeah.
So since then I was consulting candidates for campaigns from state house, state senate, Congress, lieutenant governor, railroad commission, Supreme Court, you name it. If they're running for office, we would help them. And I would always describe it to those who said, "What do you do?" So, well, if you're building a home, you generally hire a general contractor. If you're building a campaign, you hire me.
Right.
And we would put the campaigns together from soup to nuts, from polling to data to research to mail to TV. Some stuff we do in house, some stuff we would sub out to people who are a whole lot smarter than us, a whole lot better than us. To get the job done. But I had a partner for a little while, Ryan Irwin, who's one of the best in the country at Red Rock Strategies out of Las Vegas. He and I were together for about 3 years, did a lot of good stuff together. And we were active in 15, 16 states, about per cycle, roughly. So, all in all, I've probably worked in about 30 to 40 states in the U.S., in various roles of campaigns. Sometimes it's just a little bit of mail. Sometimes it's the overall strategy. Sometimes it's just some TV or some production or something along those lines. But it's been a lot of fun. I love the business of politics. I love seeing the country and seeing how different but also similar campaigns are all across the country. And one of the most common phrases you always hear in campaigns is, "Yeah, but in insert district or state." Yeah, but it's different in X. Yeah, I heard that more times than I can count. That's really not.
Yeah.
But it's a great business. It's an important business. I love what you're doing here on My Campaign Coach to get people equipped to run for office and prepared for what they're going to be faced. I think you're doing a great service.
Well, thank you. With my background helping train candidates and doing a little bit of consulting, I've never waded into the GC waters. I've always stayed a little bit more on the specialized side. But my whole goal with this, with My Campaign Coach, is that I think that part of the reason that we don't have the farm team of candidates, we don't have the number of conservatives running for office, is that we have a lot of great nonprofit organizations like Leadership Institute and others that help do training and ID, but they're nonprofits and they got to go hands off as soon as you decide you want to run. Once you take a class, they really can't do a whole lot else for you. And we have a lot of general consultants that are fantastic, like what you used to do, like Luke Macias and Jordan Berry and tons of people across the country that do great work as GCs. but there's this no man's land that candidates got to walk through when they don't have the money and they're not actually ready to run a campaign, so they don't have a GC yet, but they're already intentional enough about running for office that the nonprofits can't work with them, and there's not really a whole lot there. And I think that we lose a lot of people in that no man's land. And so my goal with My Campaign Coach is for us to help provide that resource, provide the ongoing touch and support, training and coaching that can help them get through that no man's land and be ready. Have as much as possible prepared when they go and they get that GC, and they're ready to rock and roll when campaign time comes. And this podcast is a huge part of that, getting to just tap the brains of folks like yourself that have been doing this for a long time and have a lot of wisdom and get to share that. So I thank you for being able to come on and share with us today. Let's kind of start talking about your philosophy of how you operated past tense as a GC. Mm-hmm. So when you looked at the candidates that you're wanting to work with, or the types of candidates, most folks have a general avatar of a type of, whether it's ideological or character, or the different attributes they look for. What did you generally look for in the type of candidates that you were wanting to work with that was essential for you?
Someone who knows who they are. Politics is a business that can be pretty tough to exist in. It's often, we're humans, we're sinful, we're fallible, but politics exists in a world where folks they're jockeying for money and power in some mm-hmm. form. It's government money, it's business interests, interest groups, things along those lines. So it's easy for the human condition to fall prey to those temptations. And if you don't know who you are running for office yet, you're going to find out, and you're not going to like it. So I would say to anyone who wants to run for office first, know who you are first. Have a foundation, whether it's spiritual, whether it's whatever your foundation is. For us, Raz, it's our faith, it's our walk with Jesus Christ. That's who we are. But so I'd say if you're going to run for office first, know that first, because politics, they call it Potomac fever, in Washington, right? It can get to you, and it can define you if you aren't defined beforehand. But when I meet with a candidate, I really want to know what they want to do. Why are they running? I would require every candidate to do one thing after our first meeting. Send me a one-page paragraph of why you're running, because I can write all the talking points all day. They'll sound the same for every single candidate because I see the data, we do the research, we do the polling, we know what the electorate wants to hear.
Right.
But I want to hear it from their mouth. I want to hear it in their voice, because my job as a consultant is to communicate what they want to do and how they want to do it in their voice, not in mine. And that's you can see that in a lot of campaigns. You can compare the talking points. You can tell who just did boilerplate stuff.
Yeah.
And who's actually speaking from their heart and from what they believe. Mm-hmm. And if they don't believe anything, I've walked away from candidates before. So I don't think I'm the right fit for you, because you don't seem to really have a message that is beyond what the polling data says. So anyone who just wants to hold office for the sake of holding office really shouldn't be running for office. It is truly service. We hear that, it's public service. The word service really needs to be hit on a whole lot harder these days. That it is giving to others. It is working for a better community, for a better state, for a better district. And unfortunately, not everyone who runs for office has that harder mindset. It is more self-seeking for them. It is a passion. It is something that they hope will help define them or help them find what they're looking for rather than what they want to give. So I would really encourage anyone who's running for office who's listening to your podcast, really know that you're working to give others, to serve others, not to be fulfilled yourself. There's some really great candidates out there, really great office holders, and people say politics is dirty business. I really do want to hail the fact that most of the people I've worked with in this business are top-notch, great human beings. They're in it for the right reasons, kind of like on The Bachelor. Is he here for the is he here for the right reason? But they are. They really do want to represent their communities. Rodney Anderson is a good friend and former client of mine. Yeah. That is someone who comes to mind as someone who truly does love his community of Grand Prairie and wants to serve it in whatever form of capacity he can. Jason Isaac's another great example, someone who truly ran just for the purpose of serving his community, And Don Willett. Oh my goodness! I mean, how blessed are we in Texas to have?
Yeah, I gotta have him on the podcast. Yeah, I gotta have him on the podcast before he gets on the United States Supreme Court.
You might want to move quick.
I know. I'm hoping it gets on there soon.
He's the finest of human beings as there are, and he could make a ton more money in the legal community than he does. But he truly does understand that he is serving his family, his community, his creator, his state. It's a business where there's a lot of really great people, and I want to stress that because I don't want to just talk about the nasty parts of it, because we see that every day, right?
Right.
In the news. But there's some really great people, and I would just encourage anyone who wants to run for office to know who you are and have your own vision, your own mission of what you want to do in office.
Well, even beyond looking at the individuals who are running, one of my favorite things about getting to this podcast is that a lot of our listeners are thinking about getting involved in campaigns or consulting, and I think that folks like you and Luke Macias and others that are fundamentally want to work with good people who are in this for the right reasons, that actually interrogate your potential clients about what they believe, why they believe it. Do you have that undergirding? Do you have those principles that you believe in? And you guys serve an incredible purpose there because you help get the good people elected, the men and women who actually have principle that they want to stand on and actually understand the nature of public service and that believe that. And because when you guys are doing that, you guys are helping filter those candidates. You're building a reputation that for the people in the political know, when they see your name next to somebody on a finance report, or they hear that Corbin or Luke or Jordan or whoever is the GC on this race, that tells them a lot. That tells me when I see those names next to somebody as far as that you're their GC, that tells me a lot about the character of the person, that they have one, right? Because I know your character. And so you're lending your name as a GC to this person. And so it rides on your reputation, the kind of people that you work with. And when we're talking to young people that are looking at getting into general consulting, that are looking at getting into politics or staffing roles, I really want to hammer that thing as well, the same idea that you did, that this is an area where we need good people. Throughout the process, helping manage campaigns and being field director, general consulting and niche consulting, throughout this entire process, we need good people who believe in principle. And so as a young person as well, before you go interview for that first job, you want to go work for a candidate who knows why they're running, but you want to know why you want to help them too. You want to know why you're involved in politics. Because I've seen a lot of consultants, a lot of staff, they start out really, really principled. They can tell you exactly what they want to do and what's motivated them. And then the second that they got to decide between a paycheck in politics that next month and going and working for a candidate that they never would have supported had money not been a factor, they make the wrong call. And it's because they haven't grounded themselves and set up a system where that helps reinforce their love of why they got into this.
Yeah, and one thing to remember is it is a business, but it's a business that's driven with a passion. What we do is something that we're passionate about, right? And and I would say to not every candidate needs a general consultant.
Right.
Many local candidates, county commission, city council, not all of them have the budgets for it. And really for a general consultant to have an effective business model that's sustainable. There's kind of a minimum monthly retainer. It's a consulting role, so it's typically retainers and markups on mail or something like that. Mm-hmm. But because it is a business, it is Luke and Jordan and others. It's how we all provide for our families. So there is something that all candidates need to keep in mind, that they are making money, so I need to hold them accountable. We're all human, right? We're all susceptible to I can make a few more bucks if I do it that way. So candidates need to hold their consultants accountable, and consultants need to act with integrity, and they need to keep in mind that while it's not the candidate's personal money, sometimes it is, sometimes they put it in, they still need to be good stewards of those dollars. And but at the same time, it is a business, and we in the consulting world, I'm one of them, did not always make the conservative wing of the party happy with my selection of clients, and I did not always make the establishment wing of the party happy with my choice of clients. So I figured if both people were questioning, both sides of the party rather were questioning my judgment at times, maybe I'm doing okay. But that's just that. But that's also part of the game. Is that, and I don't want to call it game business. Yeah. It's part of the industry that people are going to question what you do. And it is, there's always an opponent, right? And that's why I don't do it anymore. It's a young man's game that takes a lot of energy, and often you end up having a lot of clients, and so you're talking to a lot of different elected officials or candidates in one day, and so multitasking and keeping all the files in your head of where everyone stands and who needs what. It's a balance, and it takes a good organized mind, but it's also a business in which you are passionate about it. You are trying to do greater good. It's almost like a profitable nonprofit that little general consultants put together on their own. And but there is the accountability factor that we all need to apply to each other. That we're all working toward the same goal of winning office and doing good things for good government. But it takes a business to get there to do it. And we just need to be good stewards of that and hold each other accountable.
Yeah, and I think that from the candidate side, I want to dive in a second on what when they need a GC and what they should look for. But when you're thinking about getting into politics as a business, I think it's really critical that whatever those things are that are non-negotiables for you, that you put those on a sheet of paper, put them on your website.
Absolutely.
For me, I in my mission statement and stuff that we put up on My Campaign Coach, I have very strict parameters under. If I'm going to do one-on-one coaching with you and actually invest my time and my energy into your campaign, there are some things we got to agree on. Liberty of government, fiscal responsibility, religious liberty, life. These are all things that if we don't agree on those, you can still be a good person, but those are no-goes for me when it comes to actually putting my time and talent into your campaign. And if you don't put those out there where people can see and have individuals that you respect and hold you accountable that can tell you to pull your head out, then you're gonna run into problems. You're gonna end up taking a client that you're not gonna be proud of, that you're gonna wish down the line you hadn't taken. Because at the end of the day, you're the one accountable for your reputation and your maker for what you do and how you use your talents. And I can disagree with you on a candidate. I have before. I like a lot of the folks you've worked with, but that's not at the end of the day what's going to, my opinion of every candidate you've worked for. It's not the ultimate decision maker on Corbin Casteel's character or Luke Macias or Jordan Berry, whoever. At the end of the day, can you look yourself in the mirror? Can you fall asleep at night believing that you're working for good reasons?
That's right.
So let's go back to that GC role. And so from a candidate's perspective, let's talk about the process of bringing one on. Like, why would you need a GC? You talked about how everybody doesn't need one. What should that search look like? And when do I need to start thinking about hiring a GC?
So every candidate rather, needs an outside voice counseling them in some form. And every candidate has a different idea of what that outside voice should be. And sometimes it's their spouse, which it leads to a whole new dynamic in a campaign.
Oh yeah.
but it's largely budget driven. If Raz, you're a friend. If you run for office, I'm not going to charge you. If you just need some counsel, if it help guide you, absolutely. Everyone needs some friends, right? And but it's largely budget driven. So very few campaigns, other than large cities for city council, things like that, very few campaigns below the state house level really need to be paying for a general consultant. Their budgets are smaller. Now there are other firms that kind of do a bundling type thing. They do a lot of county commission, things like that. That's a little bit different business model, and that works great. I know Murphy Nasca, they do a great job of that up in the metro area, and they do a lot of city races. It's different business model. But the candidate themselves need to ask, can I afford this, for one thing, and the consultant needs to ask themselves, is my fee a good use of this campaign's budget? Mm-hmm. And if it's not a good use of my time, then I really don't need to do it. If a consultant has the time or the desire to just either pro bono or a few $100 a month, assist a candidate, great. But every campaign does need some sort of counsel, some sort of advisor, campaigns. If you're running for office, you're just way too into the weeds of your remarks you're about to give, or your schedule where you need to be, and phone calls you need to make to raise money, that you're not always thinking about the X's and O's of the campaign itself, and someone needs to be doing that.
Yeah, you've got to have somebody that's holding different roles in the campaign, and whether those are volunteers or paid staff or a general consultant, right. You've got to have those various voices. For one reason, because the candidate, they really have two primary jobs: talking to donors and talking to voters. And if you're worried about being in the weeds, doing all those things, and getting your remarks ready for the Kiwanis Club luncheon and getting ready to go do a debate or something like that, and at the same time trying to keep your eyes on all the top level stuff, you're going to end up losing perspective on one of those areas. And they're both really important, and you're probably going to fail if one of those gets too far out of focus. And so having somebody that's helping you as far as an outside advisor that generally knows politics, knows campaigns, that is able to that hopefully knows your character and your go and no-go issues, that can help tell you when you're getting off track. And then you also got to have that role of a campaign manager, which we'll kind of touch on in a second. But general consultants, they have when you start looking at incentives, a lot of my background's on economics as well, and aligning incentives is always a very, very important issue. And you have multiple different business models for consultants, as you've alluded to. And I think that understanding your consultant's business model is really important, because you need to understand exactly where they're making the money and how that might affect your election. He's put 95% of my budget into mail, and why is that? Well, that's where he makes most of his money, or is that really a good idea for my campaign? So how do you approach that as far as getting all the cards on the table with the various incentives that different folks have, and making sure that you're comfortable with that as the candidate and consultant working together?
Well, so the first thing I would always do in any campaign, after I get my one-pager from the candidate of why they're running, is draft a budget. And we work budget backwards. We work from election day backwards.
Right.
So if we think we're going to have about $50,000, if we think we're going to have about $500,000, whatever that number is, that's how we craft a budget based upon that. And I would put campaigns together of first we do our research, we test it, whether it be a survey or a poll in some form or fashion if we have the budget for it. Typically, we don't always, but oftentimes we do, because it is data driven. We use that to help us refine the message, not create the message, but refine the message that's going to resonate, so that we ensure the voters actually hear what we think they're going to hear, and then we speak to them in the language in which they have asked us to speak to them, and then that's what a campaign is, and it's every day of the candidate's thinking about today, the campaign manager's thinking about today, but the general consultant's thinking about tomorrow,
right,
and the next day, and the next day. And so I would always like to keep budgets 70% voter contact or greater. That means $7 out of $10 is being spent actually touching a voter. Now, what does not touch a voter? The electric bill at the campaign headquarters, the cell phone bill. But what does touch a voter? Mail, digital, television, push cards, things that a voter can touch, see, and feel. That can be flagged in the budget as a voter contact line item in the budget, and we would always keep that number, have that number in our budgets, in the Excel spreadsheet and all that stuff, to be about 70% or greater, and we did in the 80s quite often as well.
That's awesome.
And consultants would need, we need to have skin in the game, right? And we need to be paid for our time. We are consultants. We don't produce a product necessarily. So we do need to be paid for our time fairly. We don't need to be, when I was at RPT, there was a big effort to hold consultants accountable, because they were charging House candidates way too, very high retainers. So we went on an education campaign. Chad Wilbanks was the political director at the time, educating House candidates on what's an appropriate monthly retainer for a consultant. And we really did a lot of good by a lot of campaigns by doing that, by helping them save those dollars, because, as in any business, it's not just politics, there are some actors that aren't always, the best. But, again, most are. You've mentioned some of the best in the business right here on this podcast, Luke and Jordan, and there's others. But keeping that budget around 70%, and, a fair monthly retainer, there's a range. That basically depends on what the consultant can live with. But the consultant does need to be incentivized. The GC does need to be incentivized. There should be a win bonus for not everyone in the campaign, but definitely for the general consultant, something to shoot for to win. Appropriate markup on mail, a couple few cents per piece of mail or something along those lines. There's kind of industry standard, in business and politics for TV ads as, 15% goes to the buyer. Well, typically that 15% gets cut up between the media producer or placer, the buyer, the consultant. That gets broken up. The candidate should know all of this.
Right.
There should be no areas of a budget where a consultant is compensated that the candidate does not know and is not completely comfortable with, because there's nothing worse than getting a situation where the candidate is writing a check that he cannot stand every month, that she is resentful for, that she is writing, because she never did like that agreement with the consultant. Get that lined out early on. And I would urge any GC or any aspiring GC, and if you're going to sign your first, second, third client, whatever, you're at that table, yes, you want the business. Yes, you need to get the revenue flowing. But don't leave that table until you're comfortable. If you have to shave a few $100 a month off your retainer so they're more comfortable, you're going to have a lot better working relationship with your client.
Well, and so much of the relationship, it comes down to trust. I mean, you're having, from the candidate side, you're inviting someone into your life, into a very intimate circle where they're giving you advice and they're learning things about you and interacting with you in a way that very few people get to. And just that intimacy of the things you're doing together, you're going to war together. And if you don't have a firm belief that they've got your back, that they have your best interest in heart, then you're not going to be able to work well together. Right. And for consultants, there's oftentimes a temptation, whether it's through affiliate agreements or through markups or whatever, to not be explicit with the candidate because I can make a few cents over here and my retainer is really not that much, so I don't have to let them know. There's no legal requirement. There's not some there's not some group of consultants that is going to disbar you if you're a dishonest operator. I sometimes wish there were. It would be nice sometimes, but at the end of the day, you just go ahead and disclose that, because as you said, if you get into a relationship that's not built on trust, you trick them or they feel like you tricked them into this or you're charging too much, you're both going to regret that. I've seen plenty of folks, even where you had all that out in the beginning, that if you have a bad feeling about a candidate, get out, because you're going to be working with these folks and they can be nice people, but just because they're a nice person doesn't mean you want to be married to them. And in politics, at least for the term of the campaign, you're getting married to them. Reputationally, financially, I mean, it's tight.
Well, if you're starting a general consulting business, you don't just want this candidate as a client for one cycle.
Yeah.
You're looking for repeat business. And you may sacrifice a few bucks, for a few months, but you're going to earn that back in spades over the years by having that kind of trusted relationship where that person wins office, goes and recommends you to all their colleagues in the House or Senate or Council or wherever it may be, and your business will grow and grow from that because you do it with integrity, because there are no secrets, because candidates are comfortable that you have control over how they're spending their campaign dollars, and they can sleep well at night, and they have no problem writing you that bonus check, that win bonus check when they win that race.
Yeah, you can tell when you see a consultant, talking about their client or interacting with them, you can tell what their relationship is. And you can tell if it's a healthy one or not pretty quickly just by the way they talk to each other, even when they're not talking about politics. Because it's just like you could often tell if you're looking at a husband and wife and they had a fight earlier, you can still tell. It reads the same way. And it influences you in a similar way in politics. Because like I said, you're working close with these people.
Well, and let's talk about firing candidates too.
Absolutely.
Or not taking them on, because that's a reality. I've been fired many times. I have fired many times.
Yeah.
And I would urge any consultant, don't feel like that's a mark upon you that you have been fired. It's not like you've got a W-2 job and you got canned because you were showing up drunk. It's a relationship business, and like you said, Raz, it's an intimate relationship. You are together a lot. You get to know each other's families. You learn. My goodness, if you're doing your job right, you're doing a research package on them, and when they didn't pay their taxes one year, or about that one issue at the courthouse and all that kind of stuff. So there's a level of intimacy and trust that exists there, and it is a relationship business. Sometimes relationships just don't work, and that's okay. And it doesn't mean that person's a bad official or a bad candidate. And and I've learned this the hard way. Others have too. That it's a small world. And if you're getting fired from a lot of races, or if you're doing a lot of firing a lot of races, and then if you're going around talking about what happened, why, you're not going to last for long in this business, because word's going to get around quickly that, there's something amiss there. There's relationships that keep ending. I'm not sure I'm comfortable there, but ending relationships with clients or not taking the business, doing it appropriately. You know what? I don't think this is a good fit. Wish you well, but and then it's no one else's business. It's a business relationship. It's no one else's business what happened, or why you didn't take them on, or why that relationship ended. We all know many office holders are great people who've had 2 or 3 different consultants, and that's fine, because who do you mesh with? So
right. No, it's really important that you not get in relationships you can't walk away from. And for whatever reason, if you feel like you don't have the option to walk away, either as the candidate or as a GC, then you need to look very, very carefully about getting into that relationship in the first place, because you learn a lot about these folks, and there may come that point where you need to, for the good of your campaign or the good of your business as a consultant, to say, you know what, you're great, but in some case, this is hurting my other clients because you're sucking up so much of my time with your neediness that I'm giving you as much time as I'm giving 10 of my other clients, and that's hurting all of them. And I've got 25, and I can't be spending this much time on the phone. If that's what it's going to take to keep you as a client, I think you ought to go find somebody else. Or if you're as the candidate looking at the GC, be like, you know what, we need to have an honest conversation about what you're actually doing for me. And I've had a number of candidates they'll get frustrated with the amount of time they're getting on the phone with a consultant or something like that. And oftentimes it doesn't lead to firing, but they just need to have a conversation. And be able to have a frank conversation, say, look, remind me what you're doing for me, because in my mind it comes down to the number of mail pieces that are moving and the number of times you're giving me direct advice. But there's a whole lot of stuff that's going on behind the scenes as a GC that the candidate is not going to see, because they're focused on, like you said, today, and you're focused on down the line. Talk a little bit about what some of those things are as a GC that you're actually doing for the campaign. What should folks expect from a GC, and what's going on behind the scenes?
The GC should be the very visible, very obvious leader of the campaign. We would typically have Monday morning conference calls with the whole campaign team to set the theme for the week. What are we trying to accomplish this week? Finance is a big part of that. When's call time happening? Where are the fundraisers? How's the host committee? What's coming the door? First question should be asked on every call: what's cash on hand? What do we have in the bank today? And what are we expecting in the bank this week? So the GC should run the show, and the GC should be empowered to run the show. The candidate, while the candidate is the boss, it's their name on the ballot, it's their money being raised in their name if it's not their personal dollars. But the candidate should not treat the general consultant like the general consultant is is an inferior. That they're equal partners on this campaign, and if that relationship doesn't exist, that's a problem and needs to be addressed. The general consultant holds the whole team accountable. If we're not getting enough call time on the calendar, they need to recognize that. Hey, Mr. or Miss Finance Consultant, we really need X number more hours or X number more calls per week on the calendar. Mrs. Candidate, you need to be spending more time on the phone dialing for dollars. If you're not doing it, a candidate's not doing their job. The general consultant needs to bring the right team together. My firm did not do in-house mail, in-house television, in-house digital, because there's a lot of other people who specialize in that, do it a whole lot better than I ever could. And we would pride ourselves in putting together custom, modular, if you will, campaigns where sometimes Ryan Malden, for instance, is he's got a style that Upstream Communications has. They have a different style, and it needs to mesh with who the candidate is.
Yes.
So we would often get bids from different vendors that, in my opinion, would fit the candidate better, and that was my discretion. My counsel, rather. It's up to the candidate to be okay with the team we bring to the table. But the GC needs to exert the authority. Now, humble authority. Allow the team to speak. You bring together a group of intelligent, smart people who are good at what they do. Respect their opinion. Heed their advice. Don't have to always agree with it. Don't have to always take it, but apply it to the whole campaign team and to the campaign plan itself. Because Chris Wilson and Chris Perkins and Mark Del Signor and Vincent Harris. And, these are all smart guys. They're really good at what they do. And if they're on the team and they're offering all this advice and we're doing something completely different, why do they hear it?
Yeah.
So,
well, and sometimes you have those differences of opinion that are important, and that honestly comes down to the GC and talking with the candidate to figure out, hey, this could be great advice for somebody, but it's not a good fit for our campaign, or are we heading in the wrong direction? And either way, if they're on the team, you got to let them talk. You got to be able to hear that and make sure that they're given the chance from the junior side on up, just to make sure that the information that needs to get to the GC and the candidate's getting there, because they have a different perspective. They're talking to different people, and they're hearing different things from the ground that it has to get through. It may not always be the action that the talker wants you to take, but the advice needs to get through, and having those regular team calls, having structure behind those is definitely important to doing that.
Yeah, and the GC needs to be real, needs to lead the charge behind taking counsel from, hearing what's happening out there from the outside world. People, they can't showing up at events, keeps hearing a similar theme. And that doesn't appear to be consistent with the data that the pollster brings. And so, how do we reconcile that? Are we just hearing a few, squawkers over here, or is this something that's really not showing up in the data, or what? So, really need to pay attention to that sort of thing, and apply that to the overall message and the strategy of the campaign itself, because sometimes they do conflict. And sometimes you do have a candidate who really wants to shoot from the hip and really go follow his heart, follow his gut, and that's counter to the data. I would counsel any GC, it's your job to follow the data, because your candidate's going to be told a lot of different things from a lot of different people, and I promise you, they're going to come into the office and say, all right, today we need to focus on the issue of stem cell research, because it's really becoming a big deal in Alpine, Texas. I know. I just went to a Rotary. They were all talking about it. So that's our new message. Yeah, okay. Well, that didn't even show up in the data at all. So we do need to follow the data. If they do conflict, follow the data. Because if the data doesn't make sense, then remember, you're talking to thousands of people often. You're talking to hundreds of people, but thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands are actually voting. So that's where, the data actually really does need to follow. And we would hit that even on our presentations with candidates. Like, instincts are good, data is better.
Absolutely. Well, and the GC's job, as you said, is to really to know what each of those are, know where that conflict resides, and be able to help explain it to the candidate as far as, okay, this is what that actually means. Your sample size was 2, mine was 5,000.
Exactly.
There's a difference there. Okay, when you talk to those 2 people, talk about stem cell research. But on the larger scale, these are the things that are resonating. And that's where, if you're not having the voter contact focus that you've talked about and you preach, then you're not going to get the information necessary to inform those decisions. Because that's really critical, having that, talking to those voters, having the polling and research, all that feeds together to making sure that you have an accurate picture from the data. So let's talk about the campaign manager for just a minute, and that's one of the most important hires you've got. They're there on the ground with the candidate, even if they're in a volunteer capacity for a smaller campaign. They're focused on the nuts and bolts of executing day to day, so that the GC can focus on the strategy and the big picture and looking down the line, and the candidate can focus on voters and donors. So when you're looking to hire, you've obviously helped hire a lot of these candidate campaign managers over the years. What are some of those attributes that you look for that are important for candidates to keep in mind as they're looking at potential campaign manager hires?
Someone who's hungry and will do anything. Someone who's humble enough to say, I just want to learn, and I don't mind having a piece of everything. I would steer away from anyone who has their own big ideas of, here's what I think the campaign ought to do. And that's not from a standpoint of arrogance on my part. That's from a standpoint of I'm in charge of this, and we are putting together the strategy, so we have to apply that model to this. And while I do respect your opinion, and you're going to be on the campaign, and you're going to have a voice on this campaign, I'm in charge, and I need you to execute the plan. It's not that, you definitely need diversity of thought on the team, but you want a manager who's going to get the job done. And you want someone who's not afraid or who's not so lazy they won't get up at 5 a.m. and go drive across the state to get to the Republican women's breakfast at 7 a.m. And then, they end their day, at 10 p.m., emailing the schedule around to the rest of the team. Everyone wants that kind of a campaign manager who's just dogged and who's hungry, who just loves the stuff and will get their hands dirty. No one wants a manager who has all these limits of, and it's not a great attitude, just a can-do attitude. And someone who just really, we're getting back to public service, someone who wants to serve the campaign. And, most campaign managers, if they're not volunteer, they're not getting paid much, unless you're on the governor or Senate campaign, something like that. So, they're doing it for experience. They're doing it for relationships. They're doing it to build their own name, much like, we have all done at some point in our careers. That attitude of whatever it takes to get the job done and get the job done right, that's what you're looking for. And people demonstrate that in a lot of different ways. And folks who come from different backgrounds most are young, most are in their early mid-20s and trying to find their footing in the world. Some have different aspirations of where they want to go. Some want to end up in the lobby. Some have no interest in politics long term. Some want to hold office themselves. So there's different motivations behind what they want to do long term. But it is an important hire, and you don't always make the right one the first time. Like I said, I've been fired plenty of times, and I've done plenty of firing, and sometimes that needs to happen if you've got someone who's not in the right role. But a good GC will also have some people development skills and understand, well, this person might be better in this role than this role, and if someone's in it for the candidate, in it for, once again, bachelor, in it for the right reasons, you can probably find a role for them on the team where they can be effective. If they're self-serving, if they're not there to advance the candidate's agenda and get the job done, that's probably not the right fit.
You're 100% right. Oh, Corbin, I know we're coming to the end of our time together. Tell me a little bit about what your organization does, and if somebody needs some government relations or some lobbying help, what you guys can do for them.
Well, 413 Communications is a firm that I established in 2013 after my partnership with Ryan Irwin at Red Rock Strategies ended. And we have, as I was telling you, Raz, we've gone through a change in our business where we don't do campaigns anymore. It's a young man's game, and I'm seeing a whole lot more gray hair these days, and my kids need a whole lot more attention than they used to when they were just the size that you're about to have. But we love this business of politics and government, and we believe in it. It's important. And so what we do now is we help companies navigate the government affairs arena, whether it be through local community affairs type projects, working with strategic communications and messaging to local governments, state governments, with regulatory type work. We do a lot of work in energy. Obviously, we've represented several candidates and 4 Railroad Commission and several Railroad Commission candidates. So energy is an area where we do quite a bit of work. But we love helping elected officials. We love interacting with government. It's good for overall business, just being involved in what's happening, whether it be eminent domain issues or whether it be pipeline issues or natural gas or frac sand and lizards that are facing issues in Washington or we do a little bit of work internationally with some governments before the executive branch. So we're still definitely in the arena, just in a bit of a different form than we have been for a long time. But it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of great people in this business. Guys like you are doing what you do, and I'm sitting here in front of the Austin Club where we have several good friends in the lobby, and elected official just walked by even. So it's neat that we all have one similar purpose of better government, of advancing conservative values that we all stand on and believe, and it's a neat, fun arena to be involved in, and we help people from a variety of areas now of whether it be straight lobbying or whether it be sort of communications, public affairs type issues. We do a wider range of things like that.
Well, it's always good to have rock stars over on the other side of the fence doing that kind of work, and I appreciate the fact that based on your reputation, knowing you, that you're doing good work and fighting for the same things over on the government relations and lobbying side that you were on the campaign side, and I appreciate that. What are your last couple words of wisdom before you head out to your next meeting?
Know who you are. As we said earlier in this podcast, we know what we stand on, or as we stand on our faith, and that guides who we are. That is our identity. Our job is not our identity. My campaign coach is not who Raz Schaefer is. Raz Schaefer is a child of God, and got another child of God on the way. Excited for you on that. But just know who you are and walk in that.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Corbin, for coming on the podcast this week and sharing your advice about how to be a good GC and how to hire a rock star yourself. Thank you to all you guys that are listening and helped us pass that 20,000 download threshold. It's great getting to do this every week, and we'll be back again next week with another great interview. Y'all have a great week.
Please subscribe and rate us on iTunes to help spread the word. We'll be back with you next week with more campaign insights from My Campaign Coach.